Welcome to Raising Mommy, a podcast sanctuary where moms can come to listen, share, learn, and grow. I'm your host, Kimberly Tyson, vegan blogger for eatplantsforlife.com, wife and mom of two. Here in the studio, I am joined by Susan Norris, founder and director of Rescuing Hope, which is an organization whose mission is to eradicate sex trafficking and whose mission is to educate potential victims and first responders and empower advocates and survivors. Thank you for being a guest on Raising Mommy.
Thank you for having me.
So I was first introduced to Susan when I attended a panel discussion called Hidden Dangers. It addresses sex trafficking in our neighborhood. The presenters were Susan Norris, of course, and Jeff Shaw of Out of Darkness. Not only did I educate myself and my daughter, now you're here to deliver a message that will hopefully reach many, many more people. Today's segment of Real Chat is called Sex Trafficking. For those who don't know, what is sex trafficking?
There's an official definition of sex trafficking that is when there is a commercial sex act that takes place, sex in exchange for goods, money, or services for someone who's under 18, or if they're over 18, they have to prove force, fraud, or coercion. But a real simplistic way that I explain sex trafficking, it's just the commodification of sex.
So the Hidden Dangers panel discussion, what I liked about it was you brought all parents and kids in one room, and then you separated us. I found it, and my daughter said the same, that it was easier to talk about it freely without the parents being in the room. And I thought the same. It was easy for me to ask questions without the kids in the room. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was eye-opening. And I will say that my daughter, I asked her to go with me. She's 13, and she didn't want to go. And I'm sure you know how that is. She said, "Oh, I know. Don't talk to strangers. I've got this. I don't need to go and learn about this." Well, being a child that really doesn't admit to being wrong, she came out of there and said she actually learned something and that she was glad that she went. So I think that not only did it start the conversation, it helped us, talk about what we would do in certain situations, what she should do in certain situations. So I thank you for coming out and doing that. And I recommend it for all of middle and high school.
We love when we have the opportunity, particularly to get in front of students. Because of my background as an educator and working in student ministry, we know that kids are going to hide their heads, they're going to slide down in their seats, and they're not going to say a word if they think their parents are watching them. Mm-hmm. But they need the information. But parents are going to freak out if we go in to talk to their students and they don't know what we're talking about. They're thinking that we're going to just corrupt their kids with things they don't want them to know. And so that's when we devised the approach of let's tell them both the same thing. Let's do it separate and then bring them together. Now, the parents get a little more insight and detail into what they can look for and ways to truly parent in this over-sexualized culture that we live in, and that we don't necessarily share with the young people because we want you to be in the know. We actually have another Hidden Dangers event coming up in March that we're going to be doing in Alpharetta.
Okay, that sounds good. So how much money are these criminals making off the buying and selling of our children?
Well, they don't report to the Census Bureau. Right. So we don't have solid numbers. Mm-hmm. There was a study done over 8 cities in 2014 that looked at the cities and analyzed funds. And it was estimated that in Atlanta, the average trafficker makes $33,000 a week.
Wow. Wow.
It's a $32 billion a year industry based on some statistics. Others have said that it's as much as $150 billion globally.
Wow. I do know that a lot of people think that this is not going on in their neighborhood. So I actually saw a story that we ran this week. It's titled "Alpharetta Man Among Those Arrested in Child Sex Sting." It says local law enforcement agencies arrested 21 people during an undercover sex sting operation that occurred during the 5-day period leading up to the Super Bowl. Those arrested were charged with human trafficking and were arrested under the Computer or Electronic Pornography and Child Exploitation Prevention Act of 2007. Most of those arrested were men between the ages of 20 and 55 who had traveled to Atlanta to solicit sex from a child. Many of the suspects were found in possession of illegal drugs. So why is Atlanta such a hot spot for this?
You know, Atlanta's a great place to live. We have a lot of things that make it that, and it's a magnet to bring people to live here as well as to travel here. We have 4 major sporting teams that play. We have a convention center that is really a large convention center for the Southeast. We have the America's Mart that is the largest gift show in the world that is here. And then we have Six Flags and we have Whitewater. So we have a lot of vacation reasons that people come to our city as well. All of those things that bring people here for positive reasons also bring people out of their comfort zone. And many times it may be someone who has come into our city for a legitimate reason, but they've always had an interest. Maybe there's a pornography addiction and they've worked their way through that addiction and they're still chasing that dopamine release, and they're not getting the same dopamine release they were getting with the porn that they've progressed up to. And the next step would be purchase. And so they decide, I'm out of my hometown. Why not try? Nobody will know. It's that whole what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas mentality. It's not just Vegas that people think that. But I don't want you to think that the vast majority of people purchasing sex in Atlanta are from out of town, because we have a homegrown problem here. We have people in our city that are buying and selling kids and adults in this city for sex on a nightly basis.
Wow. So what's the average age of the victim?
The national average is stated that it's anywhere between 12 and 14 for girls and 11 and 13 for boys. And many don't think that a boy is a victim, but they are in fact. And as research is coming out, we're seeing more and more of them are victimized as well. In the state of Georgia, if you're talking about domestic minor sex trafficking, the organization that those victims are funneled through to receive resources and assistance is Georgia Cares. And so they keep statistics on the demographic that they are serving and the counties that they come from. And Heather Stockdale, who's executive director, said there's really not a county in Georgia that they're not seeing some activity. They may not get a report one year, but they may the next. But it's really not a respecter of persons. It will reach out anywhere. And the average age, based on the latest data that we've received for them, shows that the age right now, this year in Georgia, is like 14.6 to 15 years old is the average entry age.
Wow. So what's the look of the average perpetrator?
They look like you and me. The reason this is called the crime hidden in plain sight is because the purchasers look like the person you pass in the grocery store, or the person that attends your house of worship, or maybe someone that works with you. And sadly, it could be someone that lives in your neighborhood or under your roof, because men purchase, women purchase, couples purchase, groups purchase. And so the whole idea that people tell children about stranger danger is really a disservice to our young people, because in many cases they know, or they think they know, the person that ends up being their exploiter or their attacker, whether it's child sexual abuse or sexual exploitation.
So are they looking for a particular child as far as their demographic, like, or their living situation, or are they targeting kids that are troubled, or single family home, broken home? Or
I've sat with 3 different traffickers and asked them questions, and the biggest thing is, just like with the purchasers come from every walk of life, the victims do as well. They really don't care what you look like or what your sexual orientation is or what your preferences are. You're just the widget that they're selling. And so if someone will pay money for you, they will certainly traffic you. Now, there is some data that shows that those that are in foster care are at greater risk, that African American females are at greater risk. But I have served those who've come out of the life from every demographic, and they've been trafficked by family, by friends, by strangers. So when I asked one trafficker in particular what he looked for, he said breathing.
Wow.
And I'm a mom, and that I needed more information. And so I asked him what he meant by that. And he said, Susan, we could go over here to Lenox Mall in the food court, and you could point to any group or girl, and I could tell you how I would have her in my car in 5 minutes.
Wow.
He said, if she's talkative like you, then she probably has FOMO disease, which is fear of missing out. And I would invite her to a party because she's the one who is the leader of the pack and would not want to miss out on a party if it was a big party. And I would get her in my car that way. The young lady who maybe has acne or braces or glasses, or maybe she's a little chubby because she hasn't grown out of her childhood body into more of her adult body. And so she's still carrying some weight. I would say, hey, beautiful to her because she doesn't feel beautiful right now, and people may not be telling her she is. To the girl who is standing back, who is quiet and really isn't part of the group, but they let her tag along because it makes them look better, kind of the whole mean girl saga.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I would ask her what she thinks because nobody in the group is going to ask her what she thinks because they don't care if she's there or not. And he just went on and on talking about literally any kind of child you could imagine, the smart one, the dingy one, the athletic one, the nerd. And it really was very disturbing to see how traffickers are chameleons, and they will be whatever they need to be to go after their prey and reel them in.
So does exposure to pornography at a young age, how does that come into play?
Wow. It's just explosive in our culture. Pornographers are saying that their average target for pornography are 8-year-olds, and in some cases younger. And they prey on the fact that children are naturally curious.
Mm-hmm.
And they also prey on the fact that they can't spell. So they buy the misspellings of common URLs that children would type in their search engines. So when your child types something in, if it's not spelled correctly, or if they put .com or .org and that part is wrong, they may land on a pornography site. And they know that once you get there, nature's going to take over. Children are curious.
Mm-hmm.
If they have different body parts than what they're looking at, they're going to want to know and discover, and then they're going to feel shame and guilt for doing that because there's something innate in us that says, I shouldn't be looking at this. And so as a result, they're not going to talk about it with a trusted adult, but they're going to go back again because they're going to want to learn more. So you're building that whole shame and guilt for both male and female. And one of the things, there's been studies done on the brain and how pornography impacts the brain. And it correlates to the same type of results of drug use. So with drug use, if you use a low-level drug, you get a dopamine release. And then after a while, you can use a lot of that drug and you won't get the same dopamine release. So you increase with the level of drugs that you utilize until you end up in a body bag.
Wow.
With sex and pornography, they have found that the brain waves and the brain tracking is the same when you go from soft porn to hardcore porn to child porn or bestiality to webcam porn, and eventually drives the need to purchase and act out in order to get that same dopamine release. Now, everyone that looks in porn is not addicted. Some will stop at one point, just like the same with drugs, but you don't know going in if you're that percentage that is. So from the male perspective, it's grooming them to become purchasers. It's desensitizing them on violence against the opposite sex. It is telling them that no means yes, because in those porn sites that you're going to, that happens. It's telling them that women prefer violence, that they want you to be rough. There's gonzo porn out there, which is extremely violent. And so if this is the diet that our young men are growing up on, then their expectation when they get to the sexuality, they're going to act it out. We're seeing a whole lot more peer-on-peer sex violence because of the just flood of pornography that's available to our children now. They can look at it on their cell phone in school.
Right.
Because they're smart enough to get around all of the tools and filters and things that are put there because they are technology natives and not immigrants like their parents are.
Right.
With regard to females, if they are viewing porn, they are looking at something that is not natural, but perceiving this is how I'm supposed to act with the opposite sex. This is what they want. Pornographers are saying that the girls that come to the set do not have to be groomed or taught what's expected of them because culture is doing it for them.
Wow. In your panel discussion, you mentioned the 3 ways victims are taken.
Yes.
What were those 3 ways?
Victims are recruited or lured into the trade through force, fraud, or coercion. Force is just what you think it is. It's where someone physically takes you from point A to point B against your will. And fraud is where you're promised one thing, but you receive something else. It could be the promise of a modeling job that turns out to be something gone awry. It could be the promise of friendship or the promise of going to a party, but that party is actually a prearranged gang rape and you're the guest of honor. And then coercion can come in 2 different ways. There's the force, you're going to do this, or I'm going to beat you up, or I'm going to go get your sister and do this to her, or I'm going to kill your father in front of you and it will be your fault. But then there's also romance. Many times these traffickers are referred to as a Romeo pimp, where he will invest a lot of time wooing and loving and buying gifts. And, if you're 13 and you've got this very fine looking man in his 20s who tells you you're all that in a bag of chips and the boys that are in your grade aren't paying you a bit of attention, it's very easy for you to fall. And so as a result, you have that going on. And after a while, he'll flip the switch and he'll have a need. And he'll prey on that emotional connection that he's created and use it as leverage to get her or him to do whatever they need.
I just read your book, Rescuing Hope. Very raw, touched a nerve. Can you summarize what the book is about?
Well, when I first heard about this issue, as I shared with you, Kimberly, I had a 14-year-old under my roof. And I heard the average entry age was 12 to 14. So I had to find out some information. And I'm an educator by trade. I'm a mother and I'm female, which is licensed to be about as nosy as a human can be. And so I started digging. I talked with anyone who had any connection to this issue would talk with me. And then I found a detective who was the gatekeeper. And he lined up interviews for me with victims. With families whose daughters were missing, who they were known to be in the life, but they couldn't find them. With frontline organizations who were fighting the issue at that time. In Atlanta, back in 2010, I think there were maybe 5. Now there's so many more great things going on in our city to fight this. And then I ended up sitting with the trafficker I referenced. And I knew that students wouldn't read a book that was nonfiction, particularly with the word sex on it. They'd be mortified. And I knew that they needed the information, so I wrote it fictional so they would pick it up. But everything that happened to the character Hope in the book happened with someone or a family member of someone I talked with. And so it takes you enter in and meet Hope as a middle schooler. And you understand that she goes through some of the same struggles and issues that middle schoolers that you may know are going through with trying to fit in with friends and deal with boys and deal with family that's going through some stuff, and how she is very easily tapped into by a trafficker who gets her to share information with him she doesn't even realize she's sharing, which is what we see happen all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Our young people overshare. Social media is just a absolute candy store for a trafficker and their ability to ask and gain insight. Many times they gain a lot of insight by just trolling on the social media before they ever even reach out to the individual, because everything is not as private as we think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so we learn how Hope is recruited and groomed by the trafficker, how she is taken into the life, the horror of what she experiences while she is a victim of sex trafficking, the trauma of what a mother goes through, knowing that her daughter is caught in that life. It's very raw, as you said, those emotions. And then how this particular young lady gets out of the life, which sadly only a very small percentage do. There's some statistics that say as few as 1% actually get out of the life.
Wow. And I think you mentioned in your book, did the life expectancy of someone that's in that trade
Is 7 years. They
Wow.
say that a victim will die due to an overdose, STD, suicide, or violence at the hand of a buyer or seller.
My favorite quote in your book was, "Hold them tight, never take their safety for granted."
Exactly.
My daughter, I'm going to have her read it this summer. I think she'll be 14. I think it would be good for her to read this summer. And then I'm going to do the discussion points that you have in the book so we can keep the conversation going, because she starts high school. So
we have other discussion questions that if someone emails and requests them, we can send those out. And I always say, if there is a young person who's reading this book and they get a group of their friends and their moms to read it,
mm-hmm.
then they can send us an email to Susan@rescuinghope.com, and we'll set up a 30-minute FaceTime or Skype appointment with them to answer their questions, because they're going to have questions. And in a lot of cases, mom and dad can answer them, but sometimes they're specific to the issue, and you may or may not know how to answer that. And we want to equip them with as much information as we can. We also have a load of free resources on our website, which is rescuinghope.com, both for students and for parents.
So you are trying to get sex trafficking a part of the curriculum, the school curriculum?
We are currently developing a middle school curriculum called No Longer Hidden.
Okay.
And we hope to have it available to pilot before the end of the school year, if not by the fall. And SB 401 was passed in the state of Georgia that states that there must be education on the issue of child sex trafficking and child sexual abuse. Actually, it's not sex trafficking. The verbiage is sexual exploitation and sexual abuse for kindergarten through 9th grade. So we know, based on the data that we have studied, that there's a lot that deals with child sexual abuse, because that's been in the forefront of educators' minds and parents' minds for a long time. But we're just now, in the last 5 years, really starting to have a very vocal conversation in the school and in the community and in the media about the whole issue of sexual exploitation. So we feel it's very timely.
So I often, parents are called helicopter parents, including yours truly. And what I usually tell my kids is, it's not that I don't trust you. I don't trust the people I don't know that you are exposed to. What do you tell parents when they want to safeguard their children? What do you tell them that they should do?
Well, I personally believe that there are ways to approach this where your young people feel that they have some freedom, but where you're safeguarding. I'm a firm believer of freedom within limits and setting safe boundaries. And then you're the goalie and you kick them back in those boundaries. So with regard to technology, that's probably my biggest soapbox with parents. So many parents today want to be their young person's friend. They want to be their child's friend. And there's a season in parenting where that happens. But there's also that season where you're going to hear you're the meanest mom in the world, or you're the the meanest dad in the world. Nobody wants to come over to our house. I always took that as a badge of honor that I was doing my job correctly. But I wanted my children to always be able to come and discuss anything with me. So we had a rule at our house. There was no topic off limits for conversation. That I may not like what they say and they may not like what I say, but we could respectfully disagree. But if it came to a point that a rule or a decision had to be made, that I always had veto power because I was put in their life to parent them. And when they become adults, then they're in the position where they have veto power over their lives. And when we gave our children technology, it was made clear to them, we own these phones. We are allowing you to use these phones, but we own them. That means we can look at them at any time. And we are responsible for what is on them, not necessarily to you, but legally we are. So therefore we have a right to look at them. And we also made sure that if they had an app on their phone, we knew its purpose. And if they were on social media for any of the sites, that was fine with us, because if we told them no, they'd just go set up an account on a friend's phone or computer. And we knew that. So yes, you can do it. But I have to be your first friend or follower so that I can see what's going on. And if you start changing passwords on me, you lose technology. And I would do Google searches so that you could find out if they had other pages or whatnot out there. So that's important to do. I also strongly recommend that all technology be kept in the common space. Letting computers and cell phones go in bedrooms behind locked doors is a perpetrator's greatest dream for someone to do with their child. We've served families where the young person was on a gaming system in their room while mom was cooking in the kitchen, and a predator was using that false friendship to groom the young lady. And by the time the truth came out, she was part of an international child pornography ring.
Wow. So if I'm a teenager and I have access to Instagram, Snapchat, what would you tell me?
I would say do not have a relationship with anyone that you do not have a face-to-face relationship with. If you couldn't pick them out of a crowd and tell something about them to your family or your friends, they're not really your friends. They're not really in your life, and you don't need your numbers to be high to be validated and important. That's our culture says we've got to have so many followers or so many friends, but you're important just because you exist.
So what do you tell parents are the warning signs or indicators if they think their child is in trouble?
Well, there are a lot of them, and one of them could just be a kid going through puberty, because they all get a little weird. Suddenly, when they're elementary, you're the smartest person in the world. And then when they hit that middle school age, you become a raving idiot. But then when you hit about 25 and they're paying the bills and having to make the life decisions, it's amazing. You become brilliant again. I've made it that far. So, I would definitely say, be aware of that. But when you start seeing 2 or 3 things that are indicators showing up, it's time to be concerned. So if you see something happen, it's okay to investigate. Now, it's not okay to interrogate.
Okay.
If you come in and interrogate, just like on television, they're not going to tell you anything. The cop comes in and interrogates, and the person sits there and pleads the fifth. Your kids are going to do the same thing. But if you have an open conversation policy in your house, if you don't grill them when they walk in the door, instead of asking them a million questions, tell me about your day. That's very open-ended. That also doesn't allude to the opportunity to hear fine. Tell me about your day. What's something that happened great? Man, today, my day, that's share your own with them so that they feel like it's a give and take conversation.
Okay.
And it's not an interrogation. With regard to signs, if you see behavior changing drastically, They may be PMSing, but they may also have a problem going on. If you see a slip in grades, if you've had a great student and suddenly they're failing things, that's an indicator. Just like cell phones are your property and you have the right to search those, I would recommend instituting an open backpack policy that you have the opportunity to look in there. You can say to make sure that, there aren't any papers from school that you need to sign or whatnot. But if a trafficker is grooming your child and giving them trinkets and gifts, a backpack is the number one place that they can hide it. If your child's not making eye contact with you when they talk to you, and they always did, something's up. Now, it may be they're into something totally different. It may be that they're experimenting with drugs or alcohol, or they may be experimenting with sex with their boyfriend or girlfriend of the minute. And that still needs to be explored. But we need to, first of all, when our kids are young, teach them that you make eye contact with people when you speak to them, that's a sign of respect. And then when it stops happening, that's a sign that something's gone awry. But we have under our free resources a whole list of indicators that you can look at that are general indicators for things to look out for. If they start hanging out with a different crowd of kids, if they start wanting to dress very sexy all of a sudden and have this real interest in certain clothing stores in the mall that before would embarrass them, then a couple of things could be happening. They could be groomed, or it could be that culture is taking hold of trying to shape their thought process of what is acceptable and appropriate. Either way, an intervention is going to be beneficial to you and your child, but just make sure that it's done with an open conversation and not an interrogation, or you will shut down everything if they feel they're being interrogated.
So what do you suggest as far as when should the conversation start?
About
sex trafficking.
About sex trafficking. I believe you start talking about sex in elementary school, actually even younger, preschool. You call body parts what they are called. You don't make up a weird name for your nose and call it something other than a nose when you're teaching them about their body parts. So why do people make up weird names for a penis and a vagina? I've been told by the young people that I speak to, we can talk freely with you because you don't make it weird. So it's important as parents that you do that, because you never know when something's happening to your child. And if you've got all these cutesy little pet names for things and they're trying to self-disclose to a trusted adult, it may go overlooked. There was a case where an ADA in Metro Atlanta said they had a child who tried to self-disclose at school, and the teacher, instead of getting services for the child, validated what was happening to her as acceptable, and it was not the teacher's fault. The parents taught this little girl that her vagina was called her cookies. So when she went to school and told her teacher that her uncle was eating her cookies and she didn't like it, the teacher told her it was nice to share, because the teacher thought they were talking about Chips Ahoy or sugar cookies. She didn't know that she was talking about this child being violated with oral sex and that she needed protection and intervention. So it's critically important that we call things what they are and that we have an open conversation policy with our kids. Research shows that whoever speaks to you about a topic is seen as the expert, and everything else is sifted through that. So do you want little Johnny around the corner to be the expert in talking about sex to your child? Or do you want it to be you, where your views, your worldview, whether it's a faith-based view or not, whatever that view is, where that message is delivered through that view and that lens. So if your child hears something at school and comes home and says, Mom, everybody at school is talking about somebody giving someone a BJ, what is that? You would rather have that question than them going on the playground asking a classmate what is a BJ, because they might get a totally different answer and they're not going to give them the same moral compass to use to make decisions that you as a parent would like to do.
Wow. So you have worked with victims, now survivors. What's life like for them after?
It is hard and it is uphill, and it is in many cases 2 steps forward and 1 step back. They may or may not have appropriate education because they may have missed some school, because they may have been taken into the life while they were still school age. They don't feel like they fit in anywhere because people their age are not discussing the same things that they know to talk about. They're laughing and being giddy over boys, in some cases, just trying to figure out who they like and who's popular and what outfit to wear, when these girls have been raped and had God knows what done to them, and they don't know where to put that. There's not a compartment in their brain to know where to put that. They don't know necessarily about appropriate dress sometimes because they were trained to dress in very revealing, seductive ways. Mm. They don't have financial resources. You don't leave with a severance package when you leave the life. So they don't have financial resources. They may not have affordable housing. Many may use their body still as a trading commodity and end up getting pregnant by someone. Not that they're selling themselves for sex, but they may be giving it away for love and affection because they're seeking what everyone seeks, and that's the only way they've had anyone say anything positive to them while they were in the life. So they have a lot of things to overcome. In many cases, they have charges against them where if a car is stopped and they have drugs in the car or weapons in the car, the trafficker's going to shove it all on them and say it's hers. And so they'll get charges. A trafficker may require that a victim still checks and forge checks. I know not a lot of people today utilize checks, but there are some that still have them laying around. And so they'll have a forgery charge against them. Or they may require that they steal a car, and then they have an auto theft charge against them. The same leverage that they utilize to get them to perform sex acts is used for them to commit crimes and do whatever. In some cases, victims have said, Mama, I had to steal underwear from Walmart because he didn't give me any. Or he wouldn't give me anything when I would have my cycle, so I would have to steal pads or tampons. Well, if they get caught with those things, then they have a shoplifting charge. And so when you go to your local business establishment applying for a job and they do a background check, which everybody today does a background check, then they have all these charges against them. We have 3 young ladies right now we're trying to help with employment, and we are in desperate need of attorneys who would help us clean up their records pro bono, because sure, there are people who will help us do that for $4,000 a charge. They don't have those resources, and sadly, we don't either.
Wow. So how did you become an advocate, and how did Rescuing Hope begin?
Well, as I said, my daughter was in middle school at the time. My son had just gone to high school, and I dove in and tried to look into this issue when I heard the average entry age. And after researching it, I wrote Rescuing Hope, and I thought I was done. That was my piece. And what ended up happening was the victims that I'd interviewed started calling me. They started asking me questions about, hey, I need food, or I need help with this, or I'm in jail. And they kept calling, and they had a common theme when they would call. They would say, hey, Mama. And it always shocked me. Wow. Because I gave birth to 2 children, and I knew it wasn't one of the 2 of them because I know their voices very well. But they were needing someone to step in and fill that role as a support system for them, someone who cared. And the fact that I fed them when they talked with me, or if they needed clothes, took them and bought them an outfit when they met with me, made me the closest thing to Mama that they had at that time. It may be that their relationship with their family was estranged because of where they were. It may be that their family member was a trafficker and was the one that trafficked them. But they needed someone. So after them calling me Mama, and 6 years for me doing this on my own out of our family bank account, my husband jokingly said, your 3rd child's about to kill us financially, and you can't keep doing this by yourself. There are not enough hours in the day. So in 2015, we founded Rescuing Hope, the nonprofit, and we've been continuing the work. So I've been in the work for 9 years. We have a staff of volunteers. Just last week, we hired our very first paid position. because we need more funding coming in to be able to pay people, because right now everything that comes in has to fund the work that we do. So one day, it's my desire that we will be able to pay rock star staff to help us do what we're doing right now. We have an amazing group of women who have stepped in and are doing the work for free because they have a passion and a heart to see this happen. Many of them are working part-time or full-time while doing the work with us. So I know that if we can fund a staff, we can have a greater reach and a greater impact in this fight. But until that day comes, we're going to keep moving forward and do what we can where we are with what we have.
Okay, so how can someone become more involved?
Well, we have opportunities for volunteers. If they'd like to participate, they go to rescuinghope.com and they fill out a volunteer application, and then Renee will reach out to them and let them know when our next volunteer training is. If they would like to partner financially, they can go to rescuinghope.com, donate, and they can donate electronically with a one-time gift, a monthly gift, or through a check. Or we now have Venmo because we know that that's the way the millennials communicate.
Yep.
And so we're trying to make sure that we're involved with everyone. We have our 3rd annual gala coming up. Step Up for Hope will be on August 17th. And if you follow us on social media outlets, Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, we will be putting out the invitations, the save the dates, all the information about that when it comes out. If you have something that you're passionate about, that like running or art, and you think, well, I can't go start a nonprofit, what can I do? Well, if you're a runner, you can plan and host a 5K to benefit Rescuing Hope. If you're an artist, you can do art about the issue and have an art show or an art auction and support the organization. Maybe you have another skill set that could help our survivors. We have some who have a great desire to start their own business. And if you're an entrepreneur and you know how it works and you have some time and knowledge where you would love to come alongside and support and mentor a survivor in starting their own business, reach out to us by emailing Cindy at rescuinghope.com. That's CINDY at rescuinghope.com. So there are lots of ways that you can be involved. Doing something like you're saying you're going to do with your daughter, reading the book, doing a book club where you're sharing the knowledge that you've now gained with those in your sphere of influence will help us all in this footprint, because we recognize that we are one piece of this puzzle. We are focused predominantly on education for first responders and potential victims, and then we serve survivors as well. There are other organizations that focus on rescues and urgent safe housing. There are others that do long-term restorative care. We're one piece, but we lock arms with all the others. So if you have an interest in serving in another capacity other than what we do, we will try and help you navigate that and find the right organization for you. Because if you're not with Rescuing Hope, but you're still fighting this issue, it is a win for Rescuing Hope.
Well, I'm sure you hear it all the time. I really appreciate you for what you do.
Thank you.
And thank you for being on Raising Mommy today. Visit Susan's website again at rescuinghope.com for more information. Rescuing Hope, the book, can also be purchased on her website and through Amazon. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for using your platform to raise awareness.
If you or someone you know is a victim of sex trafficking, or if you suspect that someone is being trafficked, in the state of Georgia, please call Georgia Cares at 404-602-0068 or the GBI at 404-270-8870 or 404-244-2600 after hours. At the national level, you can contact the National Sex Trafficking Hotline at 888-373-7888. If you would like more information about having hidden dangers in your school, please contact Sharon Lighthouse at 404-457-4543. I highly recommend it. Be sure to find Raising Mommy anywhere you listen to podcasts. Check out new episodes every Saturday. Follow us on Twitter at RaisingMommyGA. Search for me on Facebook and Instagram at eatplantsforlife.com or Raising Mommy Podcast. Don't forget to email me at raisingmommy@appenmediagroup.com to share the random, fun, and sweet things your kids say, text, or do for our Off the Cuff Kids segment. If your comment is chosen for a future show, you will win a free gift card. Remember, first names only. Please include the age or grade of your child. If you have a screenshot of the text or note or photo, please include it with your submission. Thank you for listening, and remember, hold them tight. Never take their safety for granted.